Hi, my name is Sharon Smith, and this is my my introduction video. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm from Costa Rica, but I grew up mostly in the United States. I am a first-generation immigrant, and as I grew up in the United States, I grew up in a pretty poor household with like 6 kids. My upbringing has been super beneficial to me as an adult, which you will understand further along in this video. I am a big traveler. I've traveled to almost all 50 states, except for maybe like 4, Michigan and Montana. I've been to all Central American countries, and I've been to Canada, and I hope to travel a lot more. It's one of my passions. I've always taught in the Kansas City, Kansas school district. Currently, I'm a 7th grade English language arts teacher at Argentine Middle School. My school is an urban school with a roughly 70% Hispanic population, and this was really important to me when I was choosing my school. I chose Argentine Middle School because of the large population of Hispanic students. I grew up going to school here in the United States, and I really, throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, I never really had a Hispanic teacher. All of my teachers were white. And so I really wanted an opportunity to show students that Hispanic culture can be an education. Professionals of all different backgrounds can be of different cultural backgrounds. I think it's really important for kids to see that. I feel like there are a lot of challenges as an urban school teacher. However, I also know that kids need good teachers, and I can't let school politics change my reason for serving in a high-needs urban community. These are some images of my students' environment. This is the community surrounding my school. This is where my kids grow up. Additional details about me. Well, we all have personal issues we have to overcome, and one of mine is that I do too much in my spare time. I really do. I'm a full-time teacher, I'm a full-time master's student, and in addition to that, I've been a Girl Scout troop leader for 6 years. I'm the yearbook sponsor at my school. I am the student intervention team SIT coordinator at my school, and I'm the soccer team manager for my daughter's competitive soccer team. So I do a lot of stuff. Next year, my schedule is going to be a lot lighter, hopefully. So for this assignment, we had several questions that we needed to answer. One of those questions were, why do politics influence schools, but did not necessarily move school leaders to take action? Well, politics influence schools because, according to the text, the 10th Amendment removed the federal government from direct authority over education and asserted sovereignty for each state to determine its approach to schooling its citizens. Well, this shows that the federal government no longer has primary decision-making rights over schools. The states do. School leaders are not state leaders. School leaders are simply individuals charged with advocating the needs of their students and families, and they are also responsible for implementing policies put forth by the states. Because it is in our best interests for students and families, today's 21st century requirements for educational leadership recognizes the necessity of adopting professional and civic agendas for ensuring every student's success. School leaders implement state and community agendas because they serve the best interest of students and because they are at least supposed to. So why did some standards focus on outcomes and seemingly split work and skills of a profession from knowledge and wisdom of that profession? Well, understanding the work that goes into a profession and having the skills to perform that work are one thing. Teachers take on this role in the field of education. And knowing a lot of information about a profession and knowing how to take that knowledge and apply it wisely to benefit the profession is something else. This role is handled by school leaders, like your principals and your superintendents. Standards are a scope and sequence tool for teaching professionals to apply in the classrooms in hopes of reaching specific learning outcomes. School leaders are overseers of this work and make decisions on the curriculums and processes used by teachers. So, why the standards evolved to explicitly call for school leaders' direct action? Well, school leaders have to take direct action to engage community leaders like politicians and other top business leaders to serve the best interest of families and students within their boundaries. We also saw that in the text it talked about how today's school leaders negotiate scarce resources for their students and families. We also know that the research on the proactive political engagement of successful principals is extensive. School leaders cater to their population, and that means that leaders need to advocate and seek assistance from community leaders to serve the best interest of the families and students who attend their schools. After all, state leaders distribute the funding, and community boards and commerce move school agendas. Why school leaders must become political activists on behalf of students and their families? Well, school leaders need to become political activists on behalf of students and their families because decisions about school policies are not solely granted to the principals or even the superintendents who oversee schools, as we saw in our text. Because the authority over U.S. schools has dispersed over many jurisdictions, the means of enacting educational policies hinge on influence. This shows that many different community leaders are stakeholders in education and can promote decisions. It is because of this that school leaders need to use their power and their voice to push agendas that help advocate what is good for students and families served by their schools. These students and parents cannot always speak for themselves. They do not always understand the ins and outs of teaching and learning practices. It is the responsibility of school leaders to lead their schools in the best interest of their communities. So, why do politics surrounding educational policies provide the strongest connection between what school leaders feel and do and their abilities to strategically think about how to handle it all? Politically influenced policies have an effect on school leaders because they have to reconcile their feelings about policies and decide on how to implement them. As we heard in our book, these mountains and valleys of emotional and political work come from teachers and students that have struggles in implementing external teaching policies and trying to learn in conscript ways. Well, this shows that influences from outside the school building at times implement policies that reflect a one-size-fits-all understanding of teaching and learning. Because of this, teachers and students struggle to fit into and work with these policies. Many times, this means that principals and other school leaders have to be strategic about adding policies in a way that minimizes negative effects to the students and the teachers. So at this point, I'm supposed to critique my own personal professional use, thoughts, misgivings on how politics influence my decision-making processes and educational leadership decisions, right? So the chain of command has always looked like this to me. So I'm going to read this off. The superintendent looks at his or her district and creates goals and pushes principals to reach them using district-wide approaches and plans of action. Then the principals push these goals by presenting the plans of action to their staff at their school. Teachers have to follow these plans regardless of how they affect teachers, students, and families. As a teacher, I always really try hard to implement new district initiatives to my students in the least invasive way possible. I try to be gradual, and more importantly, I try not to get overwhelmed by external expectations from people who do not always understand what happens in a classroom or how each student is unique. So What do you propose will help you improve or enhance your current educational leadership decisions/practices that are politically driven in order to improve student achievement and support continuous school improvement in your classroom, schools, district, or community? This is a pretty hard question for me because there's a lot of chaos in urban schools like Kansas City. I am only a teacher in the classroom, and I feel the pressure from my admin every day. I feel like too many changes or initiatives at once can hurt more than help the students. We need to slow down sometimes. I think rushing through things is a problem. Giving ourselves time to see data is important. If we just move on from one thing to another thing to another thing and not give anything time to kind of run its course to see if it's actually causing positive change, or if we just stick with something for an extended period of time just because we don't want to change the way our schools are run and what's good for our kids, that's another problem. This is my references, and thank you so much for watching my video.